My name is Rachel Turner. I am 31 years old, and the moment I realized my own sister had erased me from her wedding guest list, felt like someone had slammed a door in my face and bolted it shut from the other side. The words glowed on the screen, "name not found," and my breath caught in my throat. I typed again, slower this time, as if care could undo cruelty. Still the same answer. It was as if I didn't exist. The sting wasn't just exclusion, it was betrayal carved into pixels, final and public. I had wired $32,000 for her venue-planned fittings, even covered Vanessa's credit card debts when she maxed them out on decor. I had poured years of myself into being the sister who fixed everything, and now I was the one cut out like a stranger. My phone buzzed on the table, an email notification. 7 words from my mother, "It's Vanessa's day. Don't make it harder." That was it. No apology, no explanation, only the cold confirmation that my place in this family had never been secure. The hook of that moment seared into me, but the story had begun long before. 6 months earlier, when Vanessa announced her engagement to Mark, my parents' house in Coral Gables practically exploded with celebration. Champagne glasses, clinked balloons crowded the ceiling, and my mother clutched Vanessa's hands as if she had delivered the second coming. I stood a little to the side, Daniel's arm around my waist, smiling faintly but feeling like furniture in the background. No one toasted to me. No one even asked about my work trip to Chicago. I had just returned from that morning. Still, when Vanessa beamed and said, "Rachel, can you help me with the deposit?" just until Mark's bonus clears, I nodded without hesitation. That was the beginning of the $32,000 I would never see again. Back then, it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like duty. I had always been the one to step in when Vanessa tanked her credit score buying furniture. She couldn't afford when she insisted on a pre-wedding trip to Napa Valley. For a wine tasting she didn't pay a dime toward, even when she demanded a couture gown flown in from Milan that I arranged through one of my clients. Each time she promised gratitude, and each time her thanks was swallowed by the next request. My mother called it keeping peace. My father called it helping family, but I began to see it for what it was: favoritism. So blatant it no longer needed hiding. Daniel had warned me. I still remember his voice, low but steady, as we stood in our Miami apartment one night after I wired another $10,000 to cover the photographer's deposit. "Rachel," he said, "at what point does love become manipulation?" I brushed him off, telling myself it was temporary, telling myself that once the wedding was over, once Vanessa was settled, maybe things would be different. But in my chest I felt the old familiar ache of being useful, never cherished. The registry incident was the moment it crystallized. We were sitting on the couch, my laptop balanced on my knees, searching for a gift that might still show goodwill despite the resentment simmering inside me. Daniel leaned over, suggesting a crystal decanter set. I typed in our names under the RSVP tab to confirm shipping details. The page refreshed, and in bold letters, "Guest list finalized. Name not found." I blinked, my chest tightening. Tried again. Same response. Daniel urged me to search his name. Also erased. I scrolled line after line: college friends, business partners of my father, even Vanessa's old roommate who once mocked me to my face. Everyone was there except us. The shock wasn't the absence. It was the confirmation of something I had always known, but never said aloud. In this family I was convenient, until I wasn't. I sat frozen, staring at the screen until my phone buzzed. The email subject line read, "Vanessa's Day." I opened it, my throat burning. Only 7 words from my mother, devoid of warmth. "It's Vanessa's Day. Don't make it harder. No love, Mom. No explanation. Just a command to accept my erasure." Daniel read over my shoulder, his jaw tightening. "That's all she has to say," he whispered. I closed the laptop, the sound echoing like a slammed door. I walked to the window, staring out at Biscayne Bay, glowing in the late afternoon Sunday. Paddleboarders glided across the water, couples strolled hand in hand. Life outside pulsed with normalcy, but mine had tilted sideways. Daniel stood behind me, his reflection in the glass. He touched my shoulder gently. You paid for that venue, Rachel. You've carried her for years. And now she deletes you like you're a stranger. I couldn't answer. The silence pressed against my chest heavier than words. My mind spun back through years of swallowed pride. The Duke MBA program I turned down at 24 because my mother begged me to stay close for Vanessa's sake. The loan I took from my savings to wipe out Vanessa's credit card balance at 26. The holidays where my gifts were unwrapped without thought while hers were paraded with gratitude. Piece by piece, I had built a house of sacrifices, and now they had slammed the door and locked me outside. I turned to Daniel, my eyes steady despite the storm inside. She didn't just cut me, I whispered. She cut us. He nodded, his voice hardening. So what do we do? For the first time, my answer wasn't to fix it, wasn't to beg, wasn't to stay quiet for the sake of peace. I sat back down, took a sip from my forgotten coffee, its bitterness grounding me. We don't beg, I said quietly. Not this time. The air conditioner hummed, filling the silence. Daniel sat beside me, still watching, still waiting, his faith in me steady, even when mine faltered. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt, I felt the faint edge of something sharper rising. Not rage, not grief. Something colder, cleaner, resolve. That night, as the city lights flickered across the bay, I pulled open the family group chat one last time. Photos of Vanessa's dress fittings, rehearsal dinner menus, and guest list updates scrolled past. My comments, sparse and ignored, trailed back months. Without hesitation, I tapped leave conversation. The bubble disappeared, and with it the last tether holding me to their show. Daniel reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. Proud of you, he whispered. I didn't reply. I just squeezed back, my gaze fixed on the horizon where the last light bled into the water. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like the beginning of freedom. And yet, even as I tried to hold on to that fragile calm, a thought burrowed into me: this wasn't over. Erasure wasn't the end. It was the first cut, the opening act of a drama that would unravel in ways none of us saw coming. The morning after I saw my name erased, I woke with a heaviness in my chest I couldn't shake. Daniel was already awake, sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone, his jaw tight in the way it always was when he was holding back words. I poured myself coffee, the bitter smell filling the silence. Any messages, I asked, though I knew the answer. He turned the screen toward me. My mother had written again, short clipped sentences. Rachel, don't make this into a scene. Think of Vanessa's happiness. Families forgive. I set the mug down harder than I meant to, liquid sloshing over the rim. Families forgive. She cut me out of her wedding like I'm an inconvenience. My voice cracked on the last word, but I held Daniel's eyes. He didn't tell me to calm down, didn't tell me I was overreacting. He just said, "You don't have to let them do this to you again." I wanted to believe him, but my heart dragged me backward into memories I had never untangled. I remembered being 10, clutching my acceptance letter to a gifted music program, my face glowing. Vanessa, 6 years old then, was throwing a tantrum because she wanted my violin for herself. My mother crouched down, stroked her hair, and told me gently, "Rachel, let your sister shine this time. You'll have other chances." That became the refrain of my life. Let her shine. Let her have this. Let her take what I had earned. Now, decades later, I stared at the proof on a computer screen. I had been erased so she could shine brighter still. Daniel came around the counter and slid a folded paper across the granite. I printed this last night. The wire receipt for the $32,000. My eyes burned as I looked at it. My name, my account, the cold proof of what I had given. He touched my hand. "You're not crazy. You're not imagining this. You paid for her celebration and she cut you anyway." I thought of Vanessa's Instagram posts, the sprawling engagement party in Coral Gables, with chandeliers glowing like a palace, the wine-tasting trip in Napa, the dress she had flown in from Italy. Every caption gushed gratitude, tagged her fiancé, her bridesmaids, her planner. Not once did she tag me. Not once did she write my name. The silence in my chest felt heavier than the coffee cup in my hand. I wanted to scream, but instead I whispered, maybe I was never a sister to her. Maybe I was just a bank account. Daniel's arms wrapped around me before the tears came. Not anymore, he murmured. Not unless you keep letting them. We sat there in the dim light of the apartment, the hum of the fridge the only sound. My phone buzzed again, another email from my father this time. Rachel, we don't want to discuss this further. Vanessa deserves peace. Don't disrupt the wedding. Be a good daughter. The words blurred before my eyes. Be a good daughter. How many times had I heard that phrase twisted to mean silence, sacrifice, compliance? I pushed the phone away. I can't do this again, I said. Daniel pulled back enough to look at me, his gaze steady. Then don't. Let's leave. Walk away before they humiliate you again. The thought startled me. Leave not just the family group chat, but everything. The city, the noise, the obligations. Go where? I asked. He smiled faintly, like he'd been waiting for me to ask. Anywhere. Somewhere they can't touch you. Somewhere you can breathe. I thought of the glossy travel magazines I kept on the shelf, the ones I never had time to open. Pages of turquoise water and white sand tables set under the ocean with fish gliding past. The Maldives, I whispered before I could stop myself. I always wanted to see the bungalows on the water. Daniel's eyes lit with a quiet resolve. Then Maldives it is. By noon, we were scrolling through flights, clicking on photos of villas with glass floors, private decks that stretched into the sea. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years: anticipation. The idea of doing something not for Vanessa, not for my parents, but for myself. As I packed that evening, slipping sundresses and sandals into my suitcase, I caught sight of a shoebox on the top shelf of my closet. Inside were old letters, my acceptance letter to Duke's MBA program never used, notes from clients praising my early work moments I had set aside for family emergencies, each one a reminder of what I had sacrificed. My hands trembled as I closed the lid. I wasn't carrying it anymore. Daniel noticed my silence. You okay? I nodded, but my voice was steadier than I felt. I'm done being erased. The next morning, as our flight took off from Miami, I watched the skyline shrink beneath the clouds. For the first time, I didn't feel tethered to it. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The journey stretched long hours across oceans, but when we landed, the world unfolded in color I'd never seen. Water so clear, it looked unreal, palm trees swaying under skies painted gold. A speedboat carried us across the lagoon to the resort, the spray cool against my face. Staff greeted us with chilled towels and cocktails, calling me by name, as if I belonged there without question. Our villa sat perched above the water, the floor, to ceiling windows opening to a horizon that felt endless. I stepped onto the deck, the ocean glittering below, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight lift from my chest. Daniel slipped an arm around me, his voice low. Worth it already, I laughed, softly, tears prickling my eyes. More than worth it. That night we dined under the ocean, the glass walls around us alive with fish drifting through blue light. Candle flames flickered against Daniel's smile as we clinked glasses of champagne. To choosing ourselves, he said. I raised my glass, my voice steady. To freedom. I thought of Vanessa then posing in her gown for photos, my parents fussing at her side. And I realized something sharp and liberating. She could have her chandeliers, her perfect pictures. I had the sea. I had silence. I had the truth. When we returned to the villa, I opened Instagram one last time, snapped a photo of the ocean glowing under the moon, and typed a caption without hesitation. Glad I wasn't invited. Turns out I have the best seat in the house. I set the phone down face first and let the waves sing me to sleep. But even in that calm, I knew the story wasn't finished. Vanessa's world was too fragile to hold without me, and cracks always find their way to the surface. The first morning in the Maldives felt like stepping into another life. Sunlight poured through the sheer curtains, scattering across the turquoise water beneath our bungalow. I stretched on the bed, the faint sound of waves beneath the floorboards, reminding me I was far from Miami, far from the cold emails and erased names. Daniel was already on the balcony, leaning against the railing with a mug of coffee, his hair ruffled by the ocean breeze. He turned as I stepped outside, his smile soft but steady. "You slept," he said, almost surprised. I realized he was right. It was the first time in weeks I had drifted into sleep without waking in a panic. We ordered breakfast to the deck, tropical fruit glistening on a tray, croissants warm from the oven, coffee rich and dark. As we ate, Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket. "Rachel, it's already started." My chest tightened. He showed me the screen clips from Vanessa's wedding rehearsal posted by guests. At first it looked perfect, the satin gown, the floral arches, the music swelling. But then whispers filled the comments section. "Where's her sister? Didn't Rachel pay for this?" Another clip showed Mark storming out of the rehearsal dinner, his expression hard, his tie loose around his neck. Guests murmured, cameras tilted, captions bloomed, drama at the Whitman wedding. I pressed a hand to my mouth, the taste of mango suddenly sour. "It's beginning," I whispered. Daniel set the phone down, covering my hand with his. "And you're not there to fix it this time." We spent the afternoon at the spa, our bodies sinking into warm oils and soft music. But even as the masseuse pressed the tension from my shoulders, my mind replayed the images: Mark's clenched jaw, Vanessa's desperate smile. I remembered all the times she had shifted blame, crying, until I handed over money or an apology. But this time I wasn't in the room, and her web was collapsing without me. That evening, Daniel surprised me with a sunset cruise. The boat glided into open water, champagne glasses in our hands, the horizon bleeding into pink and gold. A musician played softly on deck, while dolphins arched through the waves ahead. I let myself lean into the beauty, let the salt air wash away the bitterness that clung to me. For a few hours, I felt something close to peace, until my phone buzzed again. Against my better judgment, I checked. A video had gone viral. Vanessa in her rehearsal dress, tears streaking her makeup, her voice shrill. "This isn't my fault. Somebody poisoned him against me." The comments were brutal. "She cut out her sister after taking her money. Karma's real." Another read, "Justice for Rachel. Imagine deleting your own blood from your wedding." My name, my erased name, was flashing across thousands of screens. I put the phone down, my hands trembling, staring at the ocean as if it could steady me. "They're turning on her," I murmured. Daniel's arm wrapped around me, his voice low. "Because the truth always comes out, Rachel. You don't have to lift a finger." When we returned to the villa, I slipped into the pool that overlooked the sea, the water cool against my heated skin. I floated on my back, the stars above like scattered diamonds, and thought about what it meant to finally let go. For years I had been the quiet savior, the fixer, the one who absorbed chaos and made it look seamless. Now, stripped from the picture, the chaos was visible to everyone, and I didn't have to do anything but watch. Later that night, Daniel handed me a drink garnished with lime, the condensation dripping down the glass. He studied me as I took a sip. "How do you feel?" he asked. I laughed softly, though my throat was tight. "Like I'm watching a play I used to star in, but now I'm in the audience. And it's crumbling." He touched my cheek gently. "And you don't want the rollback, do you?" I shook my head. "Not anymore." Still, when I closed my eyes, old memories stirred. Vanessa at 15 screaming at our parents because I got better grades. My mother pulling me aside, her voice sharp but low, "Rachel, don't rub it in. Let her have her victories." Or the Christmas when Vanessa spent all her savings on a designer purse she couldn't afford, then sobbed until I handed her my bonus check. Year after year I bent myself smaller so she could stand taller. And here in the Maldives, I realized, bending had only made me disappear. The next morning, over breakfast by the sea, I opened my phone again. My cousin Lily had texted Rachel, "Do you know what's happening?" The groom left. "Guests are whispering your name. Vanessa's falling apart." I stared at the words, my heart strangely calm. I typed back only 3 words, "I'm not there." Daniel chuckled when I showed him. "That's the most powerful sentence you've ever written," he said. We spent the day snorkeling among reefs, the water alive with fish in colors I'd only seen in paintings. I let the sea carry me, the sound of my own breath through the mask, steady and grounding. Underwater, there were no family dramas, no erased names, no venomous emails, only silence, and it was beautiful. That evening, as we ate dinner on the sand with lanterns flickering in the breeze, I watched Daniel raise his glass to me again. "To your freedom," he said. I lifted mine, meeting his gaze. "To never being erased again." But even as the champagne slid down my throat, I knew Vanessa wouldn't stop. My absence had already cracked the facade, and cracks had a way of spreading until the whole structure fell. The waves rolled in steady as breath. I leaned back in my chair, my toes curling in the cool sand, and whispered to the night sky, "Let it fall." The third night in the Maldives should have been nothing but peace. The waves lapped softly under our bungalow lanterns, along the deck glowed with warm light, and Daniel poured champagne into tall, delicate glasses. But when my phone buzzed for the 10th time in an hour, I finally flipped it over, unable to ignore it any longer. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications. A video already with hundreds of thousands of views showed Vanessa at the altar mascara, running her veil crooked, crying out, "This isn't my fault." Someone talked to him. Behind her, Mark was walking away, his tuxedo jacket slung over his shoulder, ignoring the calls of his groomsmen. Guests turned in their seats, gasps and murmurs filling the background. I pressed play again, my chest tight, but my pulse strangely steady. Daniel leaned over, his brows drawn. 300,000 views in 5 hours, he murmured. "It's spreading everywhere." I set the phone down carefully on the table between us. "Of course it is. People can smell when a facade cracks." We sat in silence for a long moment, the sound of the ocean replacing words. I thought about all the times I'd propped her up, smoothed over her mistakes, poured money into her disasters. For years I had been the scaffolding, holding up Vanessa's perfect picture. Now that I had stepped away, it was collapsing in front of everyone. Later that night, Daniel found me sitting on the balcony, staring at the dark horizon. He handed me a cocktail, bright pink, garnished with a slice of pineapple, and said softly, "It's strange, isn't it, to watch it fall without you lifting a finger?" I took a sip, the sweetness coating my tongue, and whispered, "I used to think if I stopped holding everything together, the family would fall apart. I never realized it wasn't mine to hold in the first place." The next morning, the headlines began. Groom walks out of Miami wedding. Society bride in tears as ceremony collapses. Photos from Vanessa's grand venue spread online, the chandeliers I'd paid for, the flower arches she had bragged about, the string quartet frozen mid-song as chaos unfolded. And beneath every article, the same comments bloomed. "Where's her sister Rachel? Didn't she pay for this? Justice for Rachel." Daniel showed me one particularly brutal TikTok edit, Mark, storming off, spliced with screenshots of Vanessa's Instagram posts, flaunting her Italian gown and Napa trip. Over it, someone had written, "This is what happens when you erase blood." My name was there, bold in captions, echoed by strangers across the world. I felt my stomach twist, not with pain, but with a strange release. For years I had begged for recognition, a single thank you, a small acknowledgement. Now strangers on the internet were giving me what my own family never could: validation. At lunch by the lagoon, Daniel asked the question that had been circling between us since this began. "Do you feel vindicated?" I set my fork down, watching the fish dart beneath the glass floor. Not vindicated. Just balanced. Like the scales finally tipped the way they should have. That afternoon, my cousin Lily called. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won. Her voice was urgent, almost breathless. "Rachel, you should know, Uncle Robert confronted your dad at the reception. In front of everyone. He shouted that you paid $32,000 for the venue and they still erased you. Guests filmed it. It's everywhere now." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. He actually said it out loud, Lily exhaled. Yes, and Grandma, she stood up too. She said, "This is what happens when you cut out the one who actually loves you." Everyone heard it. When I hung up, Daniel was watching me closely. And he asked. My voice trembled, but not from fear. They can't hide anymore. By sunset, I couldn't resist. I opened Instagram, posted a simple photo of my cocktail against the endless blue horizon, and typed, "Glad I wasn't invited. Looks like I still got the front row seat." I hit share and set the phone down. Within minutes, the likes and comments surged. "Queen behavior. This is the revenge we live for. Rachel, you're better off sipping cocktails than cleaning up their mess." As the tide rolled in, I leaned back in my chair, Daniel's hand finding mine. I thought about my mother's words. Don't make it harder, and realized they no longer held power. I hadn't made anything harder. I had simply stepped away, and the truth had revealed itself without me. That night, as the stars scattered across the sky, I whispered to Daniel, "For once, I don't feel erased." He kissed my temple, his voice steady. "Because you finally wrote yourself back into the story." And deep inside, beneath the calm, I felt the certainty take root. This was only the beginning. The sun rose bright and hot over the Indian Ocean, but my phone was colder than ice in my hand. 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, and a string of jagged texts from Vanessa stacked like a wall of desperation. I hadn't answered any of them. I sat on the balcony with the sea spread wide before me, my robe tied loose at the waist, coffee untouched on the table. Daniel stepped outside, towel draped around his shoulders from an early swim. He glanced at the screen, then at me. "They're not going to stop, are they?" I shook my head. The latest message from my mother read, "Rachel, you need to think about our family's reputation. Vanessa is being ripped apart online. People are blaming us for using you. Please come home and fix this." Fix. That word had chased me since childhood. I fixed Vanessa's overdrafts. I fixed her failed classes with tutoring I paid for. I fixed every awkward silence at holidays by swallowing mine. Now they wanted me to fix the wreckage of her wedding, too. My hand trembled with fury as I whispered, "They don't want me, they want the fixer." Daniel crouched beside me, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Then don't give them what they want. You don't owe them another breath." Before I could answer, another call came through. Vanessa. I let it ring out. A minute later, a voicemail notification blinked. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Her voice was frantic, broken by sobs. "Rachel, please. I can't do this alone. Everyone's blaming me. Mark won't answer my calls. The guests keep posting videos. I need you. You're the only one who can make them understand." Tears pricked my eyes, but not for her. For myself, because I recognized that tone. I had heard it 100 times. That tone had always been my cue to rush in, to empty my wallet, to abandon my plans. But sitting above a turquoise sea with Daniel's hand steady on my knee, I felt something different rise inside me. Not sympathy, not obligation. Clarity. I deleted the voicemail without replying. We spent the morning snorkeling in the reef, Daniel pointing out parrotfish and sea turtles gliding beneath us. For the first time in days, I let myself marvel at beauty untouched by human greed. Yet when we returned to the villa, I found more messages waiting. My father's voice stern and clipped, "Rachel, your silence is making this worse. Reporters are circling. You know your sister didn't mean harm. Stop fueling this narrative and stand with your family." I almost laughed. Stand with my family. Where were they when my name vanished from the guest list? Where were they when I sacrificed my dreams so Vanessa could stumble through hers? I tossed the phone onto the bed and said to Daniel, "They don't even ask if I'm okay." Not once. It's all about saving face. He poured us both sparkling water and handed me a glass. "That's because they never saw you as someone to protect, only someone to use. Until you see that clearly, they'll keep pulling the same strings." In the afternoon, my cousin Lily messaged again, this time privately. "Vanessa told everyone you refused to come." that you're the one humiliating her. But people don't believe her anymore. They're saying the truth was bound to come out. I stared at those words, the lump in my throat swelling. For so long I'd felt like a ghost in my own family, erased except when I was useful. Now strangers, thousands of them, were speaking the truth that my own mother never dared. At dinner that night, lanterns swayed in the island breeze, and the sound of waves filled the silence between us. Daniel raised his glass. "To silence," he said. I touched my glass to his. To silence that finally speaks louder than words. Later, as I lay awake listening to the sea, I remembered one night when I was 19. Vanessa had maxed out her first credit card on clothes. She never wore, sobbing that her life was ruined. My mother had turned to me, her voice calm but commanding. "Rachel, just cover it. You'll earn it back one day." I had obeyed. I always obeyed. Until now. The next morning, as gulls cried outside our villa, I opened my call log and began blocking. One by one, my mother, my father, Vanessa. Each confirmation felt like a stone lifted from my chest. Daniel watched me, his expression unreadable, until I finally set the phone down with a shaky breath. "It feels lighter," I admitted. He smiled, faintly brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Because you finally closed the door they've been slamming in your face for years. Now you're the one turning the lock." I leaned into his touch, the salt air filling my lungs, and whispered, "I don't need to fix them anymore. I just need to free myself." The waves answered, steady and sure, carrying my words out into the vast, indifferent sea. For the first time, I believed them. The morning air in the Maldives was warm and heavy with salt, but my phone's vibration against the nightstand felt colder than ice. I ignored the first 2 calls, then the third, until finally, Daniel picked it up and glanced at the screen. "It's your grandmother," he said softly. I froze. Grandma Helen never called, not at night, not with this kind of persistence. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone. Her voice was shaky but clear. "Rachel, sweetheart, I hope I'm not disturbing you." I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the sheets. "Of course not, Grandma. What's wrong?" There was a long pause, then a breath that sounded more like confession than conversation. "I should have told you this years ago. Your grandfather, he left you something. Something important." I felt my chest tighten. "What do you mean?" Her words came slowly, weighted with regret. "Before he passed, he updated his will. He wanted you to have the Monterey house in Long Island, and his shares in Whitman Shipping. He said you were the only one who understood responsibility without demanding applause." The room seemed to tilt around me. "But Mom said everything went to her and Aunt Caroline." I remember the reading. Helen's voice cracked. "That was the old version. Your mother knew about the new one. She was in the room when he signed it. But when he died, she presented the old will to the family. She told everyone it was final. And her breath hitched. I didn't stop her. I was afraid of tearing the family apart. I pressed my palm to my forehead, memories rushing back like a tide. The way Mom snapped whenever I asked about Monterey House, the sidelong glances at holidays, when finances came up, the constant insistence that Vanessa needed more. It all made sense now. "Why are you telling me this now?" I whispered. Helen's voice was barely audible. "Because I can't carry it anymore. Ava Monroe, your grandfather's attorney, still has the signed and notarized copy. She's preparing to file it in court. You'll hear from her soon. You deserve to know the truth, Rachel." When the call ended, I sat frozen, staring at the wall. Daniel slid onto the bed beside me. "What did she say?" My throat burned as I told him. The house, the shares, the hidden will. My mother's silence. My grandmother's guilt. By the time I finished, Daniel's arm was tight around me, his voice firm. "It was never about money for you. It was about truth. And now you have it." I wanted to cry, but instead I felt something sharper, clarity. I stepped onto the balcony, the ocean rolling dark beneath the stars. For years I had believed my mother's version of reality, bending myself into her definitions of love and loyalty. Now, with one phone call, the frame cracked wide open. The next morning, an email from Ava waited in my inbox. Rachel, the court has officially accepted the filing. The signed will is on record. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for spring in New York. The law is on your side. I showed it to Daniel over breakfast, my hands still trembling. He read it, then grinned. This is huge. They can't erase you anymore. I nodded, my throat thick with a mix of relief and exhaustion. It feels like breathing after being underwater too long. But the relief was short-lived. By midday, another storm erupted online. Vanessa's stylist Olivia posted a TikTok from the wedding night. Her tone was sharp, deliberate. I styled a bride whose groom left mid-ceremony. He said, and I quote, "I'd rather walk away now than lie forever." The clip cut to shaky footage of Mark storming down the aisle, Vanessa shrieking behind him. Olivia's face returned, lips pressed in something between pity and disdain. The bride spent the rest of the night blaming everyone but herself. Staff, family, anyone she could reach. Daniel whistled low as he scrolled through comments. This woman just blew the lid off. Thousands of strangers piled on. Imagine cutting your sister and then this happens. Karma. Justice for Rachel. The phrase flooded the feed, stitched into edits flashing across millions of screens. I sat back in my chair, the sea breeze lifting strands of my hair. My name, erased from the guest list, was now trending worldwide. I didn't know whether to laugh or weep. That evening, Daniel poured champagne, and we sat on the balcony overlooking the ocean. "How do you feel?" he asked. I stared at the horizon. Like the truth is finally louder than their lies. And I don't have to say a word. We clinked glasses, the waves crashing steady below. For years I had thought silence meant defeat. But now my silence was power, and the world was finally speaking for me. The morning light over the lagoon was soft and golden, but my phone was already buzzing like a hornet's nest. I ignored it through breakfast, through the walk along the pier, even through the swim in the pool, until finally curiosity broke me. When I picked it up, the screen glowed with headlines and stitched videos. A single phrase ran like a banner across TikTok and Twitter: number justice for Rachel. I scrolled, my breath shallow. Clips from the wedding stitched together. Mark storming off, Vanessa shrieking, Uncle Robert pointing at my father, Grandma Helen's voice cutting through the chaos. Overlaid text. This is what happens when you erase blood. Another video opened, with Vanessa's Instagram post of her couture gown, then cut to her sobbing at the altar. The caption, $32,000 erased, but the truth came back louder. Daniel leaned over, his eyes wide. Rachel, this isn't just viral. This is everywhere. Millions of views. I set the phone down, pressing my palm to my chest. For so long I had carried the weight of invisibility, convinced my story would die unspoken. Now strangers were telling it for me. But with the flood of validation came the predictable storm from home. My father's email arrived first. Rachel, stop this nonsense immediately. You are humiliating our family. Reporters are calling. Your silence is making Vanessa look guilty. Fix this before it's too late. Then my mother, sweetheart, I know you're hurt, but Vanessa needs us. She's fragile. Don't let outsiders destroy our family's image. Please, for me, say something kind online. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Fragile. That word had always been Vanessa's shield. She was fragile when she failed a class, fragile when she overspent, fragile when she humiliated me. I was never allowed fragility. I was the one expected to be steel. The final blow came as a text from Vanessa herself. Rachel, please. I can't take this. Everyone hates me. You have to post something. Tell them it's not true. You're the only one who can save me. I laughed bitterly, the sound surprising even me. Save her. After she deleted me like an afterthought, Daniel found me on the balcony, my phone trembling in my hand. He read the messages, his jaw tightening. They're not asking how you are. Not once. It's all about saving her. About fixing their mess. He looked at me carefully. What do you want to do? My throat ached as I whispered, I want to block them all. He didn't hesitate. Then do it. Make it your choice, not theirs. One by one, I tapped the screen. Block, block, block. My mother, my father, Vanessa. The names vanished, replaced by silence. When I finally set the phone down, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for years. "It feels lighter," I murmured. That night, Daniel and I walked the beach. The tide curled cool around our ankles, lanterns from the resort flickering in the distance. For the first time, I didn't carry my phone with me. The world could scream without me. The waves were enough. But even as the water washed over my feet, I couldn't stop remembering. Thanksgiving dinners where my gifts were met with polite nods while Vanessa's were praised like treasures. Birthdays where my name was misspelled on cakes because no one had bothered to check while Vanessa's was written in glittering icing. Years of bending, silencing, erasing myself for the sake of harmony. And now silence was no longer a prison. It was my rebellion. When we returned to the villa, Daniel poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. "You look like you can breathe," he said softly. I smiled, faintly curling my legs beneath me. "Because I'm not carrying them anymore." The phone buzzed faintly from the nightstand, muffled by distance. I didn't reach for it. Not this time. The ocean sang louder, steady, and sure, and I let myself drift into sleep with the sound of freedom in my ears. The knock at the villa door startled me from my thoughts. I had been sitting cross-legged on the balcony, notebook in my lap, staring at a half-written page about what it meant to finally choose myself. Daniel opened the door, and a resort attendant handed him a sealed envelope. He frowned as he passed it to me. "Looks official." Inside was a letter from Ava Monroe, my grandfather's attorney. I read it twice before my brain caught up. The court had accepted the filing of the updated will. My claim to the Monterey house and the shares in Whitman Shipping was legally recognized. A preliminary hearing was scheduled in New York that spring. I sat back hard against the chair, the ocean blurring in my vision. For years I had been told by my mother that my grandfather left me nothing, that my worth was measured only in what I gave. Now, on a piece of legal stationery, the truth was stamped in ink. Daniel leaned over my shoulder, scanning the lines. His lips curled into the first genuine smile I had seen on him in days. "Rachel, they can't erase this. It's yours. It was always yours." Relief mingled with exhaustion. I whispered, "Why does knowing the truth make me feel so tired?" He kissed the top of my head. "Because you've been carrying lies for too long. The truth feels heavy at first, but it's freedom." I thought back to the nights I'd overheard my parents whispering about finances, my mother's sharp tone. When I asked about Monterey House, my father's dismissive glare. When I hinted at the shipping company. They hadn't just erased me from a wedding. They had erased me from my own legacy. And now, the paper in my hands, burned like proof that I wasn't crazy. By mid-afternoon, the internet had added fuel to the fire. Another TikTok from Olivia, the stylist, surfaced. This time she spoke with clipped precision, her eyes cold. Sometimes families create their own villains. They cut out the one who holds everything together. And when the mask slips, the whole facade falls. Her words echoed as footage of Vanessa sobbing at the altar played in the background. The comments came faster than I could scroll. She erased her sister for clout. Money can buy chandeliers but not character. Justice for Rachel. The hashtag climbed into the top 5 global trends by sunset. Daniel scrolled through the feed, shaking his head. They've lost control of the narrative. People aren't buying Vanessa's story anymore. I wrapped the resort blanket around my shoulders, staring out at the sea. "It's strange," I said softly. "All these years I wanted them to see me, to acknowledge me. And now strangers across the world are doing it instead." That evening we dined under a canopy of lanterns. The resort staff greeted us with warmth, calling me by name, offering champagne on the house. I thought of Vanessa's desperate texts, her pleas for me to fix things, and felt the sharpest contrast of all. Here I belonged without question. Back home I had begged for scraps of belonging. As I cut into grilled snapper, Daniel asked, "What would you say if they were sitting in front of you right now?" I thought about it, swirling my wine. I'd tell them silence isn't weakness. It's the loudest thing I've ever done. And I'm not giving it up. When we returned to the villa, I pulled out the notebook again. Under the word "Mom" I had written earlier, I added a line. Real love does not demand silence as proof. The words steadied me. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was writing for them to read. I was writing to finally let it go. Before bed, I opened my phone one last time. Vanessa had posted a carousel of old family photos, us in matching pajamas at Christmas, me pushing her on a swing, all carefully chosen. The caption read, "Families fight, but they heal. I love mine." I scrolled through the comments, my pulse slow but sure. "Where is Rachel?" one asked. "Another healing without your sister isn't healing." Dozens more echoed the same demand. They weren't buying her narrative anymore. I set the phone down, a small smile tugging at my lips. For years I had been invisible in their story. Now even in my absence the truth was unavoidable. Daniel turned off the lamp, sliding under the covers beside me. "How does it feel?" he asked in the darkness. I breathed deep, the salt air drifting through the open window. Like for once I'm not the one carrying the weight. The truth is carrying itself. And with that I drifted into sleep, the ocean's steady rhythm reminding me that storms pass but clarity endures. The rain began just before dawn, soft at first, then pounding against the glass like a warning. I stood on the balcony, wrapped in a robe, the sky, a bruised gray over the lagoon, when Daniel appeared behind me with my phone in his hand. His expression made my stomach clench. "Rachel," he said carefully, "you need to see this." I took the phone, bracing myself. A video filled the screen, Vanessa's live stream from her hotel room in Miami. Her hair was tangled, makeup-smeared, voice cracking as she stared into the camera. "I never wanted to lose my sister," she sobbed. "I just wanted my wedding to be perfect. I love her. I always have. I didn't mean to hurt her." The comments scrolled so fast they blurred. "Then why did you cut her? You erased her after she paid for your wedding. Perfect for who, your Instagram followers?" Some added broken heart emojis, but most sliced straight through her performance. Daniel exhaled, leaning against the railing. "She's trying to spin it. But no one's buying it." I sank into the chair, watching Vanessa plead with strangers she once courted with curated posts. "I always wanted to protect her," she said, tears streaking her cheeks. "People don't understand the pressure I was under." I closed the stream halfway through, the sound of her sobs lingering like smoke. For years I had rushed to her side at the first tear, the first tremor in her voice. This time I didn't. "Doesn't it shake you?" Daniel asked softly. I met his eyes, my voice steady. "No. Because this time the reflection she can't stand isn't mine, it's hers." We spent the morning walking along the beach, the tide curling cool around our ankles, the sky still heavy with rain. Children laughed as they chased crabs into their holes. Couples strolled with their arms linked. The world kept moving untouched by the storm unraveling back in Miami. But by afternoon, the internet had doubled down. A new TikTok had gone viral, an edit stitched from Vanessa's sobbing, live her rehearsal meltdown, and Olivia, the stylist's damning testimony. Across the bottom in bold letters, "This is what happens when you erase blood." The hashtag number "Justice for Rachel" surged past 1 million uses. Daniel whistled low, scrolling. "Rachel, you're trending on international news. This isn't just Miami anymore." I pulled my knees to my chest, staring out at the sea. For years I was told to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to carry it all without recognition. And now, strangers are saying what my family never dared. That evening, as lanterns flickered along the beach, I posted a photo of the horizon, a cocktail glass lifted against the fading light. The caption was simple: "Silence can be the loudest answer." Within minutes, comments flooded in. "Queen energy. Living proof that karma is real." "Rachel, your story gave me courage to cut off my toxic family too." Daniel read a few aloud, then closed the app. "You don't need to drown in the noise," he reminded me. I smiled faintly. I don't. But it's strange to feel seen after a lifetime of being invisible. That night, lying in bed with the rain still tapping the roof, I whispered into the darkness. For once I'm not begging to be heard. The world is hearing me anyway. Daniel pulled me close, his voice warm against my hair. And that's the truest revenge of all. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was deep. I dreamed of Monterey House, its wraparound porch glowing in twilight, my grandfather's voice echoing. You were always the one who understood responsibility. When I woke, the storm had passed, and the sky was clear again. The ocean glittered beneath the sun, steady and sure, as if reminding me that no storm lasts forever. The email from Ava arrived just after noon, the subject line stark, media inquiry, your choice. I sat on the deck of our villa, the ocean shimmering endless blue beneath me. Daniel stretched out on a lounge chair nearby. When I opened the message, my breath caught. Morning America wanted me to appear on air. They'd heard the story of Vanessa's imploding wedding, the erased sister, the hidden inheritance, and they wanted me to tell it in my own words. Daniel leaned forward as I read aloud. This is your chance to speak, he said carefully. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. But what would I even say? That my own family deleted me after I funded their perfect party? That my mother reduced me to 7 words in an email? It feels humiliating to expose. He set his glass down, his gaze steady. It's not humiliation, if it's the truth. It's power. I closed the laptop slowly, heart pounding. The world was watching, but all I could think about was a Christmas morning years ago. I was 15, glowing with pride after saving up for months to buy Dad a vintage watch I'd found at a pawn shop. He smiled politely, then turned to Vanessa's gift, a sweater she had borrowed money from me to buy, and declared it the most thoughtful present he'd ever received. My chest had hollowed out that day, but I'd swallowed the pain and said nothing. Now, decades later, I had the chance to speak, to finally be heard. Before I could decide, another email pinged, this one from my father. Rachel, decline that interview. Family matters belong to family. Do not embarrass us further. A second followed from Vanessa. Please don't do this. If you talk, I'll never recover. I'll make it up to you, I swear. The words blurred on the screen. I thought of how many times I'd been cast as the betrayer for simply wanting acknowledgement. Now they wanted silence again, framed as loyalty. Daniel touched my shoulder gently. They'll call you a traitor either way. So the only choice is, do you want to live for them or for yourself? That evening, I sat by the infinity pool with my laptop open, the cursor blinking on a draft reply to Morning America. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling. I could feel the weight of my family's demands pressing down, but beneath it was something stronger, the steady beat of my own voice rising. Instead of replying, I opened the camera on my laptop and hit record. The screen reflected my face, hair tousled by the sea breeze, eyes clear despite the ache inside. I spoke slowly, each word measured. Sometimes revenge isn't shouting louder, it's walking away and letting the truth echo. I laid out the facts. The deposit. The erased names. My mother's 7 words. I didn't attack, I didn't rage. I simply told the truth, raw and unadorned. When I finished, I sat in silence for a moment, then uploaded it to YouTube with the title Silence Speaks. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. TikTok stitched my calm face with Vanessa's breakdown. Tweets quoted my line about revenge, calling it the lesson of the year. The comments poured in, she didn't scream, she didn't beg, she just left, and look who's unraveling now. Daniel watched the numbers climb, his arms slung around me as we sat in the glow of our villa. You see, you didn't need their stage, you built your own. By nightfall, the hashtag had shifted. Numbered Noise a Sentence trended alongside numbered Justice for Rachel. Strangers were sharing their own stories of cutting ties with toxic family, thanking me for giving them permission. As we ate dinner under a canopy of lanterns, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ava. I've scheduled a meeting with the judge overseeing your grandfather's estate, her email read. They'll want to see you in New York next week. I showed Daniel my fork trembling between my fingers. He squeezed my hand. It's bigger than family drama now. It's about justice in court. I leaned back, the sea breeze cooling my skin. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the fight ahead. My family had always tried to erase me, but the law, the truth, the world itself, they were finally writing me back in. The stars blinked above us, steady and endless. I lifted my glass to Daniel, my voice quiet but firm. To standing tall. He clinked his against mine, his smile certain. To never being erased again. The skyscrapers of New York gleamed cold and sharp against the March sky as Daniel and I stepped out of the cab. The air smelled of exhaust and possibility, a sharp contrast to the salt-washed breezes of Lanai. My stomach knotted as we walked into the sleek glass building where Ava Monroe's office was located. She greeted us with a firm handshake, her presence calm, but commanding, the kind of woman who carried storms in her briefcase and called them strategy. "Rachel," she said warmly, ushering us inside. "This isn't just about inheritance, it's about fraud. Your grandfather's final will is valid, notarized, and the court has already recognized it. Your mother knowingly concealed it. That changes everything." I sank into the leather chair, my pulse thudding. "So it's real. The house, the shares, it's mine." Ava nodded, her eyes sharp. "It was always yours. They just tried to erase you." I closed my eyes, flashes of memory cutting through my mother's voice, brushing off my questions about the Monterey house, the way my father deflected every mention of the shipping business. Vanessa's smug smile when she bragged about what family would leave her. My whole life had been framed as selfless sacrifice while the truth was hidden behind their locked drawers. Daniel reached for my hand under the table, squeezing once. Ava opened a folder and spread documents across the desk. "Here's the notarized will. Here's the old version your mother submitted. The differences are clear. The Monterey house and 30% of Whitman Shipping belong to you. That's not just property, that's power." The word sent a chill through me. Power. I had never had it in this family. But power attracts resistance. That afternoon, the first email arrived from my father. "Rachel, if you go through with this, you'll destroy our family's reputation. Walk away now before it's too late." Then Vanessa's message. "Please don't take this further. If you loved me, you wouldn't humiliate me after what I've already lost." Their words should have hurt. Instead, they steeled me. I remembered being 25, offered a position at a marketing firm in Los Angeles, the chance to build a life on my own terms. My mother had begged me to stay. "Vanessa can't handle life alone. Rachel, you're the only one who can keep her afloat." So I stayed. I gave up my chance. And what did it earn me? An erased name on a guest list. "I'm not walking away this time," I murmured, more to myself than to anyone. 2 days later, Ava scheduled a mediation meeting before the first court hearing. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon polish and tension. When I walked in, Daniel at my side, my mother and Vanessa were already seated, their faces pale but stiff with pride. My father stood near the window, arms crossed, gaze cold. "Rachel," my mother began, her tone clipped, but practiced. "Let's be reasonable. Money isn't everything. Don't tear this family apart." I sat down slowly, meeting her eyes without flinching. "It's not about money, it's about truth." Vanessa's composure cracked first. She slammed her hand on the table, her voice rising. "You've always wanted to steal my spotlight. You couldn't stand me being the favorite. I didn't raise my voice. I simply reached into my bag, pulled out the notarized will, and placed it on the table between us." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. My mother's face drained of color, her eyes darting to the signature she had once pretended didn't exist. My father shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. For the first time in years, I felt steady. I didn't need to beg, didn't need to justify. The truth sat there in black ink, undeniable. Daniel's hand brushed mine under the table, grounding me. Ava leaned forward, her voice firm. "The court recognizes this document. Mediation is an option, but make no mistake, if we proceed, the law is clear." My mother pressed her lips together, her hands trembling in her lap. Vanessa muttered something under her breath, too low for anyone to catch, but I didn't care. The power they had always wielded over me had dissolved. As the meeting adjourned, Ava gathered the papers and handed me a copy. The preliminary hearing is in 10 days. They'll fight dirty, but we have the truth. Be ready. Outside the city roared with life horns, blaring footsteps, rushing voices rising in every direction. I stood on the sidewalk staring up at the skyline. For years I had felt like a shadow in their story. Now the story was mine. Daniel slipped his arm around me, his voice low. You've already won by standing tall. I let out a long breath, the chill air filling my lungs. But deep down, a question flickered like a warning light. Am I ready to face them in court once and for all? The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror in the hotel room, smoothing down the lapel of my navy suit. My hands trembled only slightly, but my reflection felt different, calmer, sharper, as though all the years of silence had finally condensed into steel. Daniel adjusted his tie behind me and caught my gaze in the glass. You don't have to prove anything to them, he said quietly. You only have to show up. The courthouse loomed tall and gray against the pale sky, its stone steps crowded with reporters and onlookers. Camera flashes burst as we climbed, Ava walking between us like a shield. Ignore them, she murmured. Focus on the truth. But I couldn't help noticing the posters. Some strangers held screenshots of Vanessa crying, headlines about the ruined wedding, and in bold letters, justice for Rachel. Inside, the air was hushed, heavy with anticipation. My parents sat stiffly at the opposing table, Vanessa. Beside them, her face pale under a layer of makeup, her eyes swollen as if she hadn't slept in days. For the first time, she didn't look untouchable, she looked cornered. The judge called the case papers, shuffled, and Ava rose to speak. Her voice was steady, every word carved with precision. She laid out the facts, the notarized will, the concealed version my mother had presented, the dates, the signatures, the law. When she placed the documents on the evidence table, I saw my mother flinch ever so slightly. Then their attorney spoke, a tall man with a booming voice, who tried to frame me as greedy, ungrateful, a woman out for revenge. He argued that my grandfather's intent was unclear, that the family had always intended to share equally, that dragging this into court was selfish. I kept my eyes on the judge, not on him, not on my parents. My pulse steadied when Ava rose again, holding up the notarized copy. Intent is not in question, she said firmly. Mr. Whitman signed this document, and the law is not erased by convenience or denial. Rachel Turner is the rightful heir. The hours stretched, testimony blending into testimony. Vanessa whispered frantically to my mother, tears streaking her face when the attorney faltered. My father sat stone-faced, but his clenched jaw betrayed him. When the judge finally spoke, the silence was so sharp I could hear my own breath. This court recognizes the validity of the notarized will dated the 15th of March 2020. Ownership of the Monterey House and 30% of Whitman Shipping Holdings shall transfer to Rachel Turner as stipulated by the deceased. The gavel struck, final. For a moment I didn't move. Relief and grief crashed together inside me, leaving me dizzy. Daniel's hand closed around mine, warm and steady. Ava allowed herself the smallest smile. Across the room, my mother's shoulders sagged as if the weight of her lies had finally landed. Vanessa buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly while my father stormed out without a word. Outside the courthouse, microphones thrust forward, voices calling my name. Rachel, how do you feel? Do you plan to reconcile with your family? What will you do with the estate? I paused on the steps, the crowd buzzing around me. For years I had been erased, overlooked, silenced. Now the world wanted my voice. I lifted my chin, speaking just loudly enough for the nearest cameras to catch it. This was never about revenge. It was about truth. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop knocking on doors that never open. And when we do, we finally see the ones that were meant for us all along. The words rippled through the crowd, carried beyond me. For once I wasn't speaking to defend myself, I was speaking for anyone who had ever been erased. That night, Daniel and I sat on the balcony of our new townhouse overlooking Biscayne Bay. The city lights shimmered across the water, and the air smelled of salt and jasmine. Papers were stacked neatly on the table beside us, documents proving what was finally mine. But I didn't need them to feel whole. I thought I'd feel triumphant, I admitted, sipping my wine. But what I feel is quiet. Daniel smiled faintly. Quiet can be a victory, too. I thought of Monterey House of evenings on the porch, with my grandfather's stories of the way I once believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. I thought of Vanessa's wedding unraveling, of my mother's 7-word email, of the silence I had chosen as my answer. And I realized that freedom didn't come from their apology. It came from walking away without needing one. Weeks later, I stood backstage at a women's leadership conference in Miami. The theme was resilience, and the host had invited me after my story spread online. My palms sweated, but when they called my name, I stepped into the spotlight. The room hushed, faces turned toward me expectant. I began with the words that had carried me through "no" is a full sentence. Murmurs rippled through the audience. I spoke of boundaries, of how silence had once been my prison, but became my weapon, of how love without respect is not love at all. Women nodded, some wiping tears, some holding hands with strangers beside them. When I finished, the applause rose like a wave. Not the approval I had once craved, but recognition that my story had touched something universal. Back home, life settled into a rhythm I had never known before. Mornings began with coffee on the deck, afternoons with work I built on my own terms, evenings with Daniel laughing over simple meals. Vanessa never called. My parents never wrote. The silence stretched into permanence, but it no longer felt like loss. It felt like space I could finally fill with my own voice. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the bay gold, I opened my notebook and wrote a final line under months of scribbled reflections. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And sometimes survival is the most beautiful revenge of all. So if you're listening to this story, if you've ever been erased or overlooked or told that your worth was conditional, remember this. You don't need to beg for love at a table that was never built for you. Walk away. Build your own. And when you do, you'll find the freedom waiting on the other side. If this story has touched you, tell me where you're listening from in the comments. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories of women choosing themselves, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest answer is the loudest justice.